Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. And today on Top Global Startups, I've got an incredible guest. We spotlight founders who are reshaping entire industries with breakthrough technologies. Today, we're going to dive into one of the most critical and transformational frontiers in healthcare, digitizing pathology with AI and how it's transforming disease diagnosis. I'm excited to be joined by Dan Roark, CEO and founder of Gestalt Diagnostics. Dan's a serial entrepreneur, angel investor, and technologist with decades of experience commercializing advanced medical imaging, automation, and diagnostic platform. His work has supported some of the largest global initiatives in science and medicine, from the Human Genome Project to its next generation sequencing, high throughput drug discovery, and now AI driven digital pathology. At Gestalt, Dan is leading the charge to bring AI into pathology labs, helping pathologists diagnose diseases like cancer faster, more accurately, and at global scale. In this episode, we're going to explore why pathology is at a turning point, how AI is changing the way diseases are diagnosed, what it takes to commercialize AI in regulated healthcare environments, and what the future of diagnostics looks like when humans and machines truly collaborate together. With that, I'd like to bring Dan on board. Hi, Dan.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Dan, for listeners who may not live in the world of pathology, why is pathology such a critical backbone of modern medicine? And why is now the moment for transformation?
Yeah, great question. About 70% of disease diagnosis, when you're actually looking at the tissue and what's happening at a cellular or subcellular level, is handled by a pathologist in the pathology lab. So when you think of everything from sequencing, a lot of that work happens directly in a pathology lab. So when you think about personalized medicine, the guys I like to say that are at the center of that diagnostic work are pathologists. And the reason it's really, uh, opportunistic today to make this transition from microscope-based work to digital work, similar to radiology and cardiology, is with everything that's happened in cloud over the last 10 years. Now, they can operate at scale in a zero footprint. So, we're not loading software on their desktop or their laptop, and we're enabling them to work anywhere, which is what a radiologist or cardiologist has been doing in the case of radiology for more than 20 years. I wouldn't want to go into that field, given that, you can't move and do your job when you're traveling, or do it when you want to be at a special location that gives you, added freedom. So to me, this is a great time. And these images are orders of magnitude bigger than radiology and cardiology. And that's part of the reason it's been slow for adoption. So if you think of the scanners in the space, the way that, think of a cell phone as a scanner, if you will, when they're taking the picture with a microscope, they're zooming through different levels of tissue.
Mm-hmm.
So again, these scanners 8 years ago were 15 minutes for one piece of glass. Large healthcare groups could be handling 10 or 20,000 pieces of glass a day. So the glass doesn't go away like the film did in radiology, but we digitize directly in the lab so that we can directly input that into our platform for a pathologist to do his work.
You know, so if you look at it, what does digitizing pathology actually mean in practice? And how does it fundamentally change the pathologist's workflow?
Yeah. So if you were to, if you and I were both pathologists today and you had a hard case, as an example, you might want to say, "Hey, Dan, you're at the Mayo Clinic. You guys are the best. Give me your feedback." That would involve FedEx. You couldn't just ring me up like in a Zoom app. But today in our platform, we have that capability. So they can share that work, they can share that patient information, all de-identified. So if they're not in network, they're not sharing any patient, HIPAA data that they should not be sharing, but they can look, at the cellular level and look at the different biomarkers, which they use up to 100 different stains to bring out the material that they want to be able to see. So, that one hard case, be it a lymph node case, whatever, a prostate case, could be 40 to 100 pieces of glass. As you think of them doing a biopsy, they want to look at kind of from the edge where they have clear margins. That's the first thing you hear when you wake up from surgery is, did you get it all? That would be my definition of clear margins. There are no, cancerous cells found. They will painstakingly look for those, even into lymph nodes to ensure that they have cleared everything. So, it's a very fascinating field, and doctors have used a tool that's been around for 300 plus years, a microscope. But you cannot plug AI into a microscope. There is no plug-in, right?
Mhm.
So when you digitize, now if you look at radiology, there's 700 FDA-approved algorithms in radiology. In pathology, there's one handful. There's about 5. So it's very early days. There's billions of dollars that are now being spent to bring pathology up to where radiology and cardiology are. We have a huge partnership with Optum Healthcare, where they have their own radiology and cardiology solutions, and they've adopted ours for pathology. And so we're doing that integration work. And I like to say the spaghetti, or all of that interconnection between the electronic health record and the variety of labs, across a health system. Bigger health systems may have 20 different labs, and physicians across 40 different cities. They're across 30 different states or more now,
Mhm.
and they have to all be credentialed in those. And so keeping track of all of that, is a huge juggling act. But when you apply software to it, you know, which is what we do all of that credentialing of these doctors in our platform, as an example. It just streamlines everything. And you would be amazed at how many manual procedures. They're still faxing. There might be 20,000 manual orders a day at large healthcare systems related to pathology. We digitize all that so that they don't have to look at it in a manual way. So it is really transformative for the laboratory and for the physicians, that are serving, huge swaths of patients.
Can you share an example of how AI-assisted pathology had materially changed outcomes for a patient or patients, particularly in cancer diagnosis?
Yeah, I think the thing that pathologists say is, hey, these rare cancers, can you find those for me? Can you show me the cancer hotspot digitally, right on the screen, so that I can, when I open the case up, you've already counted it. They like to say, it's mind numbing to count eosinophils. They call them EOs. I've counted so many EOs, I see them in my sleep. So, it's straightforward for us to count those things. Essentially, you can do supervised learning, you can do large language models where you can train unsupervised. To identify these things. So, we've trained, hundreds of thousands of images. Lookalike images are more important than the actual image itself, for, say, mitotic cell counting. So if you think of in the tumor microenvironment, like tumor cellularity, where, you want to see how aggressive a tumor is, looking at mitotic counting, which is a very simple thing. This is from when one cell divides into 2 cells. One reason a tumor, expands is because those cells that are now misbehaving, if you will, they're replicating much faster than normal cells, like 5 times faster. And so that's how these masses occur. And so they want to know, how aggressive this is and at what stage it is. So, helping them stage or grade cancer, it's adding more tools to their tool belt.
What was the original insight that led you to found Gestalt Diagnostics in 2017, and What problem were you determined to solve?
Yeah, so I got brought in. It wasn't my idea per se. There was a large radiology practice, about 140 radiologists in my neighborhood here in Washington State, that had built their own workflow that got integrated into Siemens Healthineers product for radiology, and they had held back the rights for pathology, and they convinced me that the market was ripe, for this adoption to happen in pathology. I flew around, went to a conference in Europe, went to one on the East Coast, and I felt like, the scanners, because that's, if you don't have scanners that can quickly and accurately, scan these images and then allow me to import them into my solution, you know you're not going to be in the game. So for instance, when I started, it took 12 to 15 minutes for one piece of tissue to be scanned and shipped between India and the US. That's a non-starter, because each patient, big, you can't get enough volume. It's not at scale. Today, that takes 30 seconds. So that's what's happened in a span of 8 years. And these scanners that were, nearly $1 million when I started, I knew, kind of, if I'll pull in Moore's law as an example, that these scanners, the cost would come down because of the processing power, and how good these CCD cameras are today. I built imaging systems in a past business, and I saw how much innovation happened in a short period of time there. So I was highly confident that that would happen. And today, these scanners are a couple $100,000. So they're a fifth of the price thereabouts that they used to be, and they're only going to continue to drop. And if I look at our large customers, they may have 40 to 60 of these scanners spread across their health system, or if they're a large reference lab, because they have labs all over North America and into the rest of the world. So being able to share these cases, from third world countries where they don't have the benefit of the training that we have here in North America, we can leverage our skill set digitally to support those regions.
You having built and exited multiple companies before, what was different or harder about building an AI first company in healthcare?
Well, I'm an engineer. I like to say things, if you're a home builder, you can look at this home and you can say, wow, aesthetically, that's gorgeous. And it's also built, uh, you know, really well. It's not going to come down on you, and you can see just by the size of the timbers and everything. To me, the first challenge with software is it's bits and bytes. You can't really get a sense for what you have outside of all of that strenuous, I'll say, QA testing that you do, and really engaging the guys that are in the cockpit, the guys in the driver's seat, to get them to say, hey, yeah, this makes sense to me. This is how I would want to use it. Removing thousands to millions of keystrokes for them. These guys spend an inordinate amount of time, just documenting patients, in part for CYA, so that, that they've covered all the bases as they make a diagnosis. Well, we've done a tremendous amount of work to have cool gaming devices that allow them to move at speed, with our solution, which, to me, again, if I was doing that day job, I want to have, tools that, that don't hold me back, that allow me to streamline, the process I'm trying to, you know, deal with.
Well, how do you think about trust when deploying AI into clinical decision-making environments? Because, the tools hallucinate. We've been using multi-agent large language models but it's a problem. And then the other part of it is empathy, right? And compassion.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think you have to have a lot of discipline around how you build the algorithm and how you test the algorithm. The number in this case of pathologists that actually validate the algorithm with you, and show you. We like to say they annotate, so they will They will say, this is disease, this is early stage disease. We have customers, we have one customer with 20 couple of million pieces of tissue that they're digitizing. So again, the discipline around how you can then use those to stage disease and to, as you're grading it, to me, there's a tremendous amount of value there. And we're already seeing that in radiology. Again, my comment earlier, 700 FDA approved algorithms out there. So there's a lot of learning, and I like to say it's just putting more tools in the tool belt of these physicians so that they get the right decision as fast as possible.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? Because infobesity, they're so inundated with data that they can't.
Right.
It's interesting having gone through a number of different scenarios myself. The biggest problem they have is it's not that their answers aren't out there or cures aren't out there. The thing is they don't know where to find them, and
Right.
it's like I told you about the stem cell stuff. You would think that doctors would know a lot more about stem cells.
Right.
Some of them, not all of them, right? But
Sure.
the problem is we're inundated. Think about it. In your world, Dan, you got about 300,000 items. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. Dan has more information as personal cloud, the entire web. The problem is Dan's trajectory is following the same trajectory of the web. By that, I mean doubling every year. In 5 years with the Internet of Things, you're going to have 10 million items. Think about this. As smart as you are as an engineer and build all these companies,
Right.
how many times in the last 2 weeks said, hey, Dan, I sent you a message. Did you get it? Where'd you send it? I sent it to your email. Which one? Right?
Right. Yeah.
When did you send it?
Spot
2 days.
on.
Let me check.
Right.
Send it again. I can't find it. Or now you
Right.
send it to WhatsApp because you're using WhatsApp as a filtering tool.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. And so
It
this
is.
challenge is it's not that it doesn't out there, and we don't people don't get it. There's 128 zettabytes of data on the planet Earth today. If you took DVDs or CDs and stacked them one on top of another, it would go 93 times between Earth and the moon today and growing. And so estimated next year, 176. What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think you leverage the tools that are in front of you. Again, a microscope, is I like to say Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours to be an expert, right?
Yeah.
But AI, if you train it appropriately, it's a tool that allows them. We show them the hotspot. We show them how we scored the hotspot, and then we show them the top. We can start with 25 cells. We can give them 1,000 cells. We can count 5 million mitotic events on one piece of tissue. If they count 200, they're working overtime. The reason my company's name is Gestalt is I had a pathologist that said to me, I asked him, I said, I don't see you using a key clicker when you're doing your fill counts like I did when I was in grad school. He goes, well, when you've done this as long as I have, he goes, it's just kind of my Gestalt. I just know this, I'm going to score this, as a stage 2 cancer. He goes, I've seen enough of them. Again, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, you can land an airplane.
You understand, you already know what the answer is because you're so familiar with it.
Right.
It's interesting. So looking ahead 5 to 10 years, everything's going to change. What will the pathologist's role be alongside of AI? Is there going to be AI doing all the work and the pathologist just checks every once in a while?
Right. So, I early on with this business, I had a pathologist say, hey, you're here to kind of take my day job. And I asked him, I said, well, radiology's been digital for 20 years. Would you agree? And he goes, yeah, for sure. 20 years. I go, well, what are those guys doing now? He goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, I assume they're doing something else. They're not radiologists, are they? And he goes, well, no, they're still radiologists. I go, well, I think you'll be fine too.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's just more tools in the tool bag. These guys have a lot of pressure on them to get the right diagnosis. And, when you're counting all of these biomarkers, as an example, if you look at Keytruda, the most prescribed drug on the planet, 40 different indications today, 18 of them are for cancer.
Yeah.
So if you can have a companion diagnostic, i.e. a biomarker that says, if this marker is scored this way, you're a good candidate for this, or at least for a follow-on to make sure,
Yeah.
we think this could be helpful to you. Um, so, that's the best case scenario, is to come up with companion diagnostics that, check the box to say that, hey, you know, you are a good candidate. And then
Well, that's
the
it. And this hyper personalized medicine, I've been talking about it a lot. The thing is, we don't get it. It's like we're all different. Somebody
right,
gives you an antibiotic and may or may not be the right thing for you. And so we've got
right,
to come up with this in a hyper personalized way. I've been talking about a lot, Dan, off topic a little bit, but I've been writing about using the AI. It's kind of like your grandmother, right? My thing is, you're going to have one interface to everything on the planet. And you're going to be able to go out, and whether it's going out and saying, listen, I got a problem. I'm a suspected breast cancer 2A, a triple or stage 2A triple negative breast cancer. And these are the kind of things I need. But I want to know in a hyper personalized way exactly what the hell I need.
yeah,
Is it Keytruda? Is it Break Bio in Miami? Is it,
right,
what is it? And
yeah,
how can I, and the whole intent is, how do we increase life, right? Longevity and
yep,
quality of life.
yeah, because we don't want to be around if it's not quality, right?
Exactly. That's it.
Right. I mean, who wants to be, looking out a window drooling? I don't mean to
Yeah, no, that's
paint a
true.
bad scenario, but we all have family members. I do, at least, who have been there, and
I've been there too.
I don't want to be there, and I didn't. They didn't want to be there, and our health system, propped up for them to stay, to keep them alive like that, and
Well,
I just disagree with that.
the one thing was real interesting. My dad had a stroke, right? And they said he was going to die in a week. And so I ended up, I mean, literally, they called me up. I was in California, had to fly back to Pennsylvania. I went out, and I'm a psychologist. So I'm a clinical psychologist and humanistic. And so I looked
Mhm.
at it, and I'm looking at my dad in this room, and I thought, this is the most sterile crap I've ever seen in my life. And so he hadn't talked. So get this. So I said to my dad, I said, Dad, I don't know if you're listening or not. I said, but if you are listening, remember you said you wanted to get a basset hound? I'm going to buy you a basset hound. And he turned around, Dan, and he said, you promise? Yes. I said, I want a brown and
Yeah.
white female. They're friendlier. So I went out and got a dog, seriously. Right. And so what I understood is familiarity also is critically important. So I went down to my
Right.
dad's house, and I took pictures of it when I was a kid, and I redid it and made it look exactly like it did when I was a kid, like everything. So my
Right.
mom had been done 19 years. He messed it up. It looked exactly like it, repainted everything, like made it look like that, curtains and everything. So anyhow, he comes into the house. Well, they wanted to put him in a nursing home. I said, I don't want him in a nursing home. I want
Right.
him. He comes home. They said he would never walk or talk again. In less than a month and a half, he was walking and talking and bitching again, too, by the way, which I really like. I didn't think I'd like it until he started.
Yeah.
"Yeah, why in the world?" I remember I cut a tree down in his front yard. Why in the world did you cut a tree down in my front yard? It's not your house. It's my house. But when it's your house, you can cut the damn tree down. But it's not.
Right.
And I had to cut it down because we had to put a septic in, right? And I didn't.
Okay.
But I got to tell you, it's the first time I ever smiled when my dad was bitching at me. And so the
I love
quality of life
that.
is important. And the
Yeah.
kind of things that you're doing, I have a number of companies out of my 180 companies. I probably have 30 companies that are doing similar kind of things, trying to make the world a better place. And here's the other part, Dan, it bothers me a bit, because the kind of technologies you have could work with several of those companies today that are actually taking off like crazy, right? And we have an infobesity problem because you don't know who else has some things that could be complementary. And so the
Right.
progress that the growth that you experience could be exponential if you hook up with those companies. And that's another thing. It's a problem, right? Because we
Right.
get so siloed building the damn companies. I'm going to be one of the keynotes at the Health Tech Summit next week. And, I'm going to be talking about stem cells. Well, everybody should know about stem cells. I mean, this is like, you just told me about your knee, right? Yeah. And
Yeah.
your friend. But why not? It's crazy. We just don't know.
Right.
And technologies like you have, do you envision AI becoming a second reader, a co-pilot, or something even more transformative? What do you think?
Well, think of every pap smear that's read today. Um, that has only 10% of them are looked at by a pathologist. So this is going back to 2000 when Hologic and others automated this. So if you were to ask a pathologist to look at every pap smear today, I think they would probably quit.
Yeah,
So we're already seeing examples of this in pathology. I think this is good for the pathologists. These guys are overwhelmed with the amount of work that they have. Cancer cases are skyrocketing. We're learning to diagnose better. I was a part of the Human Genome Project. The first draft was 2001. Your comment earlier about data and how much data is out there. In every cell, there's 3 billion base pairs in our body. That's 30 New York City phone books if they still print them, right? In every cell of our body. So, finding where things go wrong is how we stay healthy. And
yeah,
we used to wait till somebody got sick to treat them. The
right.
goal of personalized medicine is to say, hey, you've got a marker that says that you could have ALS, or that you could have this other disease.
Yeah,
Let's keep it in check and keep you in a healthy state. Because we know from the drugs that we've been trying to make for 15 plus years for ALS, as an example, as soon as that tau, starts to build up, right? It's like gunks up the engine, and you can't really remove it. There's very little success after it's taken hold.
no, I agree with you. And that's, early detection. One of the companies we have is a cancer vaccine company, Calvary. It's located in Arizona. And, he's not only detect, but actually to go in and vaccinate against the cancer. So one is prevention. The other thing is to be able to attack it directly. And
Right.
these kind of technologies, the other thing is, I don't know about you, but it gets me because, if you're not in the right stream of things, it's hard to get visibility to get people to take a look at what you have, right? You need cheerleaders behind you. And, having
Right.
having gone through this myself 17 times, having those cheerleaders is critically important, and people that are connected, because when it's all said and done, if people they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yep.
And if you're going to change the game on this thing, it's like we can talk about it after the fact. I'm passionate about it because I hear this stuff every day, and I've heard it I've been involved for over 40 years in building companies in Silicon Valley, so I know a little bit about it. It
Yeah.
baffles me, actually. You supported massive scientific initiatives and built multiple companies. What are some of the lessons that you've learned that have helped you to be able to build better companies each time, and specifically about Gestalt?
Yeah. Well, I say, business working is at scale is people really working well together. So I think communication face to face, with the pathologists, the laboratories, the health systems that we support, is critical to understanding their problems and then translating that from an engineering standpoint into a product that makes their life easier. And so, having pathologists on the team, I mentioned the cockpit. I like to think of F1. I'd love to be a race car driver. Never got that chance, but it looks like a heck of an adrenaline rush. But if you
You're
don't sit,
smiling while you're saying it. I was with. I actually had dinner with Emerson Fittipaldi. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
oh yeah,
He
sure,
won Formula
yeah,
One and Indianapolis 500. So he's a cigar
yeah,
company, and we actually had a couple cigars one night. And it is
nice.
the thrill of talking to somebody like that.
Oh
You
yeah.
can feel the energy.
For sure. So, we want to be able to put them in our cockpit and then see that smile on their face that says, hey, this is making a difference in my day, which is then making a difference in their patient's day.
Yeah.
Right. So it takes 6 weeks for a diagnosis from, hey, doc, I think I got something here, like a a bump or a tumor. I'm not sure what's going on, but I think we better take a look at it. From that to actually saying, hey, here's how we're going to treat it, takes 6 weeks.
It's
And in the
insane.
world,
I got Dan.
yeah,
My wife just went. My wife has cancer, and she just went through it. So I've gone through it. When I talk about the triple negative, I mean I'm telling you right from the heart because I had to use
yeah,
my AI to figure this stuff out. And why in the world you have to wait so long? Because time is of the essence,
right.
right?
Yeah. Well, sorry to hear that. I hope she has a very good outcome. A buddy of mine, he's a pathologist, and his wife got breast cancer, and he looked me in the eye and he said, Dan, if I did not walk her case through, she would not have
Well,
survived.
that's it. You need to have advocates, right? And you
Right.
need these concierge doctors and all that. And it's insane because you have to have them because you need
Right.
the network. It's the same thing in business. You need the networking guy.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, so that face to face, I think from an engineering standpoint, I try and work really hard with my team to say this is what we heard you say you want, and put that in writing. And they're like, well, yeah, I think that's what I want, and I say it a little sarcastically because. Well, when they test it out, they go, "Well, why didn't you do this?" And we're like, "Well, we're engineers. We heard you say just do this." Right?
Yeah.
So of course we can change it, but they think that's super easy. I'm like, well, super easy could be 10,000 lines of code.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
now, fortunately, we've got AI to help with that. So maybe we only have to do 5,000 lines. I don't know, but my point is engineering time is not free, right? It's far from free. And then doing all of that regression testing, if you will, to make sure as we keep adding more functionality, we've got a lot of code mass that we're plowing through now. I've got a good size engineering team, and we're dealing with some good challenges. But we're really excited. The biggest thing I hear from pathologists is as opposed to 8 years ago where they said, well, you're kind of here to take my job. Now they're saying, oh, I want this AI.
Well, they don't have a choice because they're not going to be able to compete. You know
Right,
what I mean? Because what happens, Dan? You're giving them superpowers, and if they don't,
right.
and it's like I looked at some of these radiology groups that are out there, and the ones that have automated that are using AI in their practices, even to deal with the customers, are so much better. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
right,
And so if they don't do it, they're gonna be. Somebody asked me directly. I had a doctor ask me. You were talking about AI, and he said, "What would you really think we need to use in the practice?" And he wasn't being flippant. And I said, "Let me
right.
tell you. Do you ever heard of the dinosaurs?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you don't see them anymore, do you?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, guess what? You don't want to be a dinosaur."
Right, exactly.
You know?
Well, we can also look at, Kodak, instant film, the old film industry
Yeah.
that went away. Those guys controlled the world at one point,
Everything.
and they missed it. So it happens all the time. These new, blue ocean opportunities, if you will. Netflix. They were just
They were
a little
laughing at
guy,
us when they were doing the
right?
boxes in the grocery store. I remember, and
Right,
they were laying the seed. Or I remember Bezos. He said, I remember Jay Leno was laughing at him onto the Night Show in 1999 or 98, and they're laughing at him, and he said, "You're bleeding money," and Bezos started laughing, but in reality, he knew what he's doing. He was building the framework to change the world.
right, absolutely. So, I'm really excited about, leaning in around, the AI. The important distinction, these guys that are 9 out of 10 today in pathology are still using a microscope. But we've seen a very fast transition the last couple of years. We've got a really healthy growth in our market. It's projected to grow about 13% a year between now and 2033, just here in North America. And we're half of the world, diagnostic effort that is occurring is in North America. So that's where we focused our effort first. But we're now in front of projects, globally, which is really exciting. I've had other businesses where I've been able to, put my own subsidiaries out there in Europe and in Asia And we're just starting to look at that with this business. So to me, that's an exciting time. There's a lot of acceleration here. And, what I hear from pathologists, they're like, hey, on Thursday afternoon, I want to be able to get to my kid's soccer event or, whatever it is. And that, I don't want to miss something, because there's a 10,000 patient study, prostate study. So dudes, I like to say,
Mhm.
81 of them were diagnosed as healthy and they had prostate cancer. That's about 1% that were missed by eyeball, with a microscope. So, the AI does add value. And when those people come back, when those guys come back in and say, hey, I don't feel better, I feel sicker, they're like, oh boy, now, we're further down the road and this disease is more
You know what they're
serious.
saying, Dan? I've got a problem, Houston.
Exactly. So, these are tools that make them sleep better at night and get them, I like to say maybe they could be better golfers if we make them more efficient. They can get done a bit earlier.
Yeah.
So it's exciting times.
So closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you, Dan?
Yeah. So, I think this is going to be a really exciting year this year for our business and for our industry. I'm going to be at the JP Morgan event next week myself. There's a lot of, I think, good progress in medicine. There was a 2.3 billion acquisition of Intelerad in early December by GE Healthcare. They're a similar business to what we do, but they're on the radiology and cardiology side. And GE is already in that market. So, to me, this is a huge opportunity, and I'm really excited to be focused on it. And they can get a hold of me, I guess, D Roark at gestaltdiagnostics.com. Or, I'm sure you can put with this podcast, you can put my contact details as well. But yeah, I'm happy to chat with folks.
No, that's great. Well, if you want to stay on after the show for a few minutes, we can talk. And to all of you out there, thanks for joining one more time. GSD presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. We'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. And thanks, Dan, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Thanks for having me.